Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Theology on the Rise. Um, I'm Nathan, one of your hosts. This is Caleb, another one of your hosts. Seth is not here today, and if you didn't catch the announcement video that we put out, um, just we'll let
He
it
has
just
met
out.
with
But
an unfortunate accident. No, he's
No.
fine. He's fine. He's decided to step away from the podcast for now. Yeah.
for now. So he'll probably still appear in a few episodes every once in a while, but like he won't be a consistent presence in the episodes. So today it's just me and Caleb. And on the other side of the screen, we have a very special guest, D.P Curtin. That's how you say your last name, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
Sometimes
good.
people add an A into it for whatever reason.
Curtain.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uchenian, like I'm Armenian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and like how you reached out to us, like I think it was back in February, and asked us if we would be interested in having you on the show, and sort of showed us a little bit about what you are doing. And could you just talk about that a little bit, like what you do?
Yes,
And
specifically the Scriptorium Project, which is a large catalog of texts at this point. And I know I mentioned it a little bit in passing. So the Scriptorium Project is a collection of, at this point, hundreds of books. All of them have to deal with the early church, church in the antique period, in the medieval period, books and texts and letters that have existed but have been totally inaccessible to people for effectively forever, unless you had access to some esoteric library and could speak Latin or Greek. These texts were just kind of there. They were on a shelf. The function of the Scriptorium Project was to take those texts and be able to put them so that they're accessible to everyone, so that there's a total state of transparency in terms of the history of the church, particularly in the West, so that it's not a question of, I'm taking it on the authority of someone else, or I'm taking it on the authority of this historian. It's spelled out right there, and you could make that claim, with the hope that it helps some sense of Christian unity attached to that. Yeah. So that's the function of it. And I've been trying to promote it a little bit more actively recently, just as it's become exceedingly large at this point. We have things from really every corner of the world. So Anglo-Saxon documents, things from North Africa and Egypt and southern India, places that you wouldn't necessarily even associate with Christianity, but they go back very, very far. In the case of stuff from southern India, they go back to the time of Thomas the Apostle, who at least supposedly had gone there during one of his missionary journeys.
Yeah.
Incredibly cool. That's such
that's
an
really
amazing project. I think not just like really cool, but kind of invaluable, like you mentioned. Like there's to have this, history that is accessible to people to read, and they can see like, no, this is like how we got here, and this is why we believe in this, and so forth. That's really awesome. How many people do you have working on this project?
At any given time, it depends, because like I'm usually strong with a background in Latin. There are certain languages that are well beyond my scope. So I usually have to contract out for certain things. I don't know anything about Slavic languages. When we did the documents with St. Thomas, they're in a Dravidian language called, I should know this one, Malayalam, which if you've ever seen it, I can't make any difference of it whatsoever. So it really depends upon how much of a juggling act I'm willing to be able to engage in.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't even know, like, could you talk a little bit about how it happens that people can like even learn that language, like learn those ancient languages? Like, yeah, because like I don't know what the process would be to do that,
Start
and like be
learning.
able to learn that and then translate it into English or whatever, popular language there is.
So I could probably only speak to like classical languages, which is exposed to relatively early. So Latin and ancient Greek. with Latin, it's the most accessible because it's the same alphabet and
Right.
mostly the same orthography, the same pronunciation style.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, so that's not difficult, particularly if you already are familiar with things like French or Italian or Spanish.
Right. Yeah.
You can
Because
see the relationship that
sure. Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
There's through lines.
Once you start going into things like ancient Greek, which starts with a different alphabet and a different
Yeah.
style of pronunciation, things get a little bit more complicated. And
Right.
it's all the more difficult because ancient Greek, even in pronunciation, is completely different from modern Greek.
Yes.
In the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
like we speak modern English here right now, and that's comprehensible to each other. But Anglo-Saxon, English as it was spoken in the year 1000, is a totally incomprehensible thing to us.
Right. Just totally different. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because the
Yeah.
dialect just changes over time. Yeah. Languages are always so interesting to me.
Yes.
In high school, like I took a tiny little bit of Latin, but not enough. Like I don't remember any of it now, but like, yeah, it was cool learning about Latin and how, you have like French and a few of those romantic languages that come from that and that all kind of play into English. And yeah, languages are just so weird.
Very
But very
interesting.
cool
It's
to
very
study.
interesting. Yeah.
And then yeah, Greek too. Greek is, I don't know exactly what I have like what type of Greek I have learned. I think as far as pronunciation goes, I've probably learned mostly modern Greek, but like last year as part of my undergrad, took a little bit of I just took one Greek course, and so I know nothing of Greek, but I kind of know the little bit of basics that come with Greek, and yeah,
And
it's
Greek
just cool.
is a little bit more complicated. Latin, there's some variation with classical and vulgar Latin, but with Greek, uh, there's the Athanase Greek, which you see in the ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle.
Okay.
You see Koine Greek, which is the Greek that's used. It's the low Greek of the Gospels. It's
Hmm.
intended to be accessible and is a little hard to discern sometimes just because of regionalisms. There's medieval Greek and modern Greek and Noetic Greek. Uh, there's a lot more variety there, which makes it a little bit more complicated to sort out.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah. No, that's really cool. That's great that this is happening because
Yes.
yeah, I like we had another guest on a few weeks ago, Brian Wolfmueller, who's like he's a Lutheran YouTube theologian
Guru.
guy guru, and he's working on translating some of those like things from the Reformation and stuff like that. And there's
Yeah.
just it's always so good that those things, the ancient texts of the early church fathers and the early church fathers writings, and even these more like modern things get translated just because yeah, it's just great
Yeah,
that people have access
that
to them,
was
can learn those.
part of the expectation. If you went to a university, even prior to about 1900, you were believed that you would know Latin because all the books are in Latin, all the books
Mhm.
in the library are in Latin, everything
Mhm.
that is published in the academic sphere is in Latin.
Yeah.
So, and with Luther, all of his works are originally, or at least early on, the academic ones are composed in Latin. It's only the
Mm.
later German Bible that you start to see him started going into vernacular.
Yeah, actually, thinking about that, I might have misspoke. I don't think Brian is translating those things. I think he's abbreviating them. He's abbreviating some of those writings from the Reformation. But yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, that was a misspeak on my part. But
That's
yeah, no,
okay.
this is this is really cool. Um, yeah, so today we thought we'd jump into talking about one of those early church fathers, August, Augustine, and yeah, just talk about his work and his writing and how that plays into some conversations around evil and truth and those kind of things. So, would you just speak to Augustine? Sorry,
Either
a
or,
little
buddy.
bit.
Either or.
Yeah, I know. So, as a background, like my undergraduate was at Villanova, which is a university institution run by the Augustinian friars,
Okay.
uh,
Mm.
who are kind of behind the scene in terms of the drive of Western civilization. So, you mentioned this Lutheran theologian. Martin Luther was originally an Augustinian friar before he had started
Mm,
out the
Correct.
path towards the Protestant Reformation.
yep.
There are other people like Gregor Mendel, who's the father of modern genetics, was an
Mm.
Augustinian friar. And currently, Robert Prevost, current Pope Leo the 14th, is an Augustinian.
Oh,
Really?
really?
Oh, that's
That's kind
cool.
of cool.
I didn't know that.
So their emphasis was very much in talking about Augustine and his thought, and how that kind of plays out, because he is someone, he's probably in the realm of Western Christianity the second most influential, only after St. Paul. Everybody he knows of him, he's cited in all of these great authors for centuries to come. Some people don't really know what he's about. So, as a brief synopsis of Augustine, he's someone that's born in the 4th century in North Africa, at a time where Christianity has been legalized, but it's yet to become the dominant or even official religion of the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
His mother is a Christian, his father, Patricius, is not. Augustine is initially exposed to the scriptures through a relatively poor Latin translation. He doesn't think much of it. He prefers the High Latin of Cicero and Ovid and Virgil, which is very poetic and intentional. And he sees like the Greek and Hebrew scriptures, and he's perplexed by them.
Yeah.
He has to come to a point of being able to recognize certain philosophical questions. Um, in his youth, he's involved in a group known as the Manichaeans, which at one time was a major world religion.
Oh,
That I don't know if you're familiar with them at all.
no, no.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not, unfortunately. Yeah.
They're incredibly obscure today, but they they're kind of an amalgam of different beliefs. There's Buddha and Christ and Moses, and they're all kind of thrown together. But
Interesting. Okay.
Augustine puts his religious precepts into them for quite a while. And he has a lot of philosophical questions, questions about the nature of the world, the fabric of reality, what good and bad are. And the Manichaeans, they tell him, don't worry, we have this guy Faustus. He's going to come and he's going to fix everything for you. He's going to answer all the questions. He's going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's for you. And when Augustine meets Faustus, Faustus is apparently a little bit of a wet match. And so much so that Faustus asks Augustine if he can tutor him.
Right.
So Augustine becomes frustrated with the whole idea of Manichaeanism, which he sees as kind of vapid. He returns to his mother's Christianity, but he can't make the jump. He's very, very immersed in the world of his own passions. Um, I say this as a psychologist, and even though he's been dead 16 centuries, I'm a little cautious to offer a diagnosis here.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I probably venture that he suffered with some kind of sexual addiction. He's someone who's very much attached to the life of the world, the life of the flesh. Um, he can't give it up for various reasons. Even later on in life, he has a very serious issue with being around women. Um, his disciple Pisidius says that he couldn't even have women in his house. It was too much of a temptation for him.
Wow.
Um, for Augustine, he wants to know what it is to be good, to do good in the world. He is very influenced by the world of Greek philosophy, distinctively Platonism or Neoplatonism at the time, but that's not really enough. And so he returns back to the scriptures themselves. And the story that's told is that he was in a garden in North Africa and he was praying, asking for a sign, and he heard a little child singing a song, Tole lege, pick it up and read it. And so he did. He picked up one of the letters of St. Paul and read it. And in that
Wow.
moment, had this experience of what they might call metanoia, this transformation. And at that point, he decided that he was going to be effectively all in.
Hmm.
And from there, he had a non-traditional career within the church, which at the time, especially early on, was very challenging because most people didn't know exactly what ecclesiology would look like. How do you run this great thing? I mean, we
Yeah.
still fight like this today. Um, he he had gone to a local town, which is modern Annaba in Algeria, which at the time was called Hippo Regius, and the bishop was retiring, stepping down, and he had just passed through the region, but all of the people there decided that he was going to be the next bishop. He wasn't a priest. He wasn't ordained for any purpose. This is
Mhm.
just kind of how things happen, especially in the early centuries of the church. You just kind of grabbed and picked, and they say that you're going to be the next person in charge.
Mhm.
You're the next guy.
Yeah. They did something similar with Ambrose in Milan, who at the time wasn't even a Christian, and he would become the next bishop.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So a little bit of a challenge for Augustine. There's almost a quick sense of study here. He has to go in deep, and he has to be able to answer the questions that he has to be able to answer that everyone is going to pose to him, because he's the intellectual heavyweight of this period.
Hmm.
When you think of the 5th century, Augustine is the heavyweight of the Western world. There are other thinkers that are out there, even
Yeah.
ones that are considered relatively famous within Christianity, but none of them quite hold the same weight as Augustine did in his own
Sure.
time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So his famous works like Confessions, which is still, I mean, you can go to Barnes and Noble today and find that. It's still considered one of the all-time bestsellers,
Hmm.
which gives a detailed account of his life, and also City of God, which is
Yeah.
a very famous
I know
text.
that one.
Yeah, I've read
Yeah,
excerpts from that,
Mhm.
of the City of God.
most people have read excerpts because reading the whole thing is like reading the phone book. It's
Yes.
just too much. There are other things. He has amassed a number of letters to famous people of the period, a lot of exchanges with Jerome, who was working on his own biblical translation at the time,
Hmm.
into what was then a vernacular language, Latin. Um, he has his homilies, all of which survive just by, uh, it's not probably a hyperbole to talk of it as a miracle there. When
Hmm.
Augustine was dying, the Vandals, the barbarian tribe, had come down from Scandinavia and were actively sacking the city of Hipparchus while he was there.
Hmm.
And for reasons that seem unclear to us historically, they decided not to burn Augustine's library, which is
Weird.
the only reason that we know about it.
Yeah.
Strange. That's crazy.
Huh. And the God was on it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's
So
keep going. Yeah.
that's Augustine in a nutshell there.
Sure.
Yeah. So what is, like, when you think of Augustine and his works and writings and, like, your study of him, what is something that has, like, drawn you to him? Like, just one, if there could be one thing or maybe a few things that draw you to his work and writing, and yeah, what are the things that draw you to him?
So for me, I don't know if everyone has had this similar encounter. Um, the writes the writings of theologians sometimes can be a bit dry.
Hmm. Yeah,
There's a couple of different flavors of it. I think of like the heavy intellectualism that I'm going to work this out piece by piece, bit by bit. And you see that in things like the Institutes by John Calvin or
sure.
Summa Theologica by St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah,
Um, it's not that they're not accurate, but I can't emotionally connect with that. Right?
sure. It's just a slog to get through, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a textbook, and
Yeah,
they're designed to be textbooks. Calvin was a lawyer by training. Um, there are also people who are less than intellectual in their approach, where there's a lot of magic and miracles, and I don't
sure.
want to downplay the existence of things that are in the realm of the supernatural, but that doesn't really speak to me as much as it might to other people.
Yeah, no, for sure. I understand what you're saying. Or even just like sometimes things are some theologians in some circles can be so reader friendly that it's just, like, not
Yeah.
academically appeasing in any way, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's
just like,
not.
it's so basic. And that honestly, that's for some people, that's great, and people can emotionally connect
Mhm.
with it. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, Augustine, even despite the centuries that separate us, he is very fleshy. He
Yes.
I feel like I could meet him. Like, this isn't a
Mm.
person
Yeah.
that's immersed in some kind of hagiography. He is very much a real person. And the
Yeah.
struggles that he deals with, they're intelligible to me as a psychologist.
Definitely, that was something that stuck out to me even as you were describing his life story there. Um, yeah, just this is a this is a man, this is a guy who, yes, very intellectual and very, like you said, an intellectual heavyweight of the time of the region. He was the man, like he was scholarly and he was smart and people were going to him asking for mentorship and all these things, but that facet of his like worldly struggles really humanizes him quite a bit in my eyes, and I think that makes, yeah, no, I agree with that. And also, but also coming out of that struggle with the flesh, very intellectual guy, also struggling with the flesh, but in that struggle, like you mentioned, he was asking the question like what is good, and what is good to do, what ought I be doing. And I think you get there when you're like, I think it wouldn't be a stretch to say that he was feeling conviction of some kind, or just like feeling sort of that this lifestyle that he was living, that he was kind of maybe feeling on some level trapped in, and that drove him to that question, what is good. And that caused him to seek out, keep coming back to his mother's religion, right? Because
Yeah.
he was looking for that answer.
Augustine, I think at a certain point he noticed, because of his interest in Plato, and Plato is someone who's very interested in the idea of the good. So on one side, you have this Greek idea of Platonism, what is the good? How do you be good? And this biblical idea that goes into a sense of Hebrew morality,
Mm,
of a certain sensitivity to God, and the
mhm,
ideas of personal and social responsibility. Augustine is living in an age where the classical tradition exists, and this distinctive biblical tradition also exists. How
mhm,
are they merged?
mhm,
And
right.
this will come out a little bit more strongly in the Middle Ages and something that they call scholasticism, the fusion of these two worlds. But the first person to do it is Augustine. He's the one who's trying to. There are other people at the time, like Jerome, who I've mentioned. He's also trying to do it, but he's struggling more in the process. He
Right.
feels like he's always in a position of at least unconsciously preferring Cicero over the biblical scriptures.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Yeah. So would you say, like, I guess that what drives you to him is his ability to connect with you as the reader, kind of thing, and his perspective on topics, but also like you said, he's fleshy, he's real, and you're able to like connect with him. Is that kind of what you'd say
So
what draws you to?
I think, um, try not to be too clinical here. Um, my reading of people is that they usually have a certain emotional core. And once
Mhm.
you pick up on that, you can kind of pick up on the grammar of their thought, the pattern of their behavior. You kind of have an expectation of who they are on a characterological level.
Hmm.
My reading of Augustine in Confessions and another work of his, Enchiridion, which is the Latin word for handbook, he seems like someone who's very aware of the deep psychological need for human love.
Mm.
That's something that's mentioned. We certainly see that in the later letters in the New Testament. There's talk of God as love. But Augustine's also someone who expands upon this idea.
Mm.
For him, the life of the Christian has to be outside of more of the monastic idea where you're going out in the desert. For him, it's about being in community, the
Mhm.
assembly of the church, the community of people, and the love that that entails is fundamental. And it's something that we experience, right? That's so much of the life of the church. But trying to be able to put that down into words, for Augustine, this is fundamental. It's a moral precept for the church, and he talks about this. It's not about specifically a question of moral rules, but Augustine says that to love and do as thou will, which is similar to what Paul is initially trying to hint at. Paul gets tripped up on this because he talks about this especially with the Corinthians, but he finds a lot of frustration. Uh, Augustine is trying to be able to implement the same idea, and he does so with his later rule. He creates a community there in his hometown of Tagaste, where people are able to live together and create a sense of this communion where there's a sense of accountability, a sense of responsibility, but also a sense of love that exists between people, which is inalienable from Christianity itself.
Hmm. Right. The sense of some kind of a community, and yeah, yeah. So he's big into love. That's what I'm hearing.
He's a lovey guy.
Which maybe also played into like his struggle with sexuality and like, or not
Yeah,
sexuality, but like sexual sin, and just like
Definitely.
yeah.
yeah, that's a common one. I think a lot of people they'll equate emotional love with sexual love, which is
Right.
not difficult to do, especially for someone like Augustine who was exposed to it so young.
Hmm.
Uh, Trying to be able to find some level of substitution there, like with any addiction.
Yeah.
My ilk will talk about that. You never really get rid of addictions; you just kind of substitute them for something a little bit more operative.
Hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a sad reality sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess getting into like our other topic of like Augustine's um views on like evil and yeah, truth and that kind of thing. Like what were his views on those things? Were you gonna say something?
No. I think that's yeah. Let's jump into the topic of evil. That's the other big through line for this episode. So I'm interested to hear.
Yeah. So Augustine struggles, like a lot of Christians struggle, with this question of evil.
Mm-hmm.
So if we read in the introductory lines of Genesis, that God
Hmm.
creates the world and the world is good, where does evil come from?
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
a great
Yeah.
question.
Right.
There's a lot of different potential ways of answering that. Uh, Unfortunately, Genesis does not give us the answer directly, wh- which would
Yeah.
make things a lot easier.
Moses. Yeah.
So the the philosophical challenge is this: um, if God didn't create evil, who did? And if God did create evil, is he therefore responsible for evil in the
Mhm.
world?
Hmm.
And by extension, is he good then if he can create evil?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the philosophical question.
That's a classic rebuttal you'll hear from a lot of atheists. You know, if God
Oh
is
yeah.
good,
Why is
where
there
did
evil?
evil come from? Did God create evil? Your God created evil.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
no.
And he's even like I I was watching, someone sent me a video this morning that was someone talking about how this person thought that God sustains evil as well and allows that to happen.
Allows it
And
to continue.
she was asking me like, how would you respond? How would you respond to this? And yeah, so let's get into this question a little bit. What was Augustine's thoughts on that, or did he come to a conclusion on those things?
Well, yeah, Augustine has come to the famous conclusion. So Augustine, when he reread the Greek scripture, the Hebrew scriptures, he went into Genesis. He's confronted with this. So he obviously has a problem because if God creates evil, beyond the issues of what it implies for God, it also
Mhm.
means that evil is something substantial,
Right.
that evil is a created thing.
Right.
Augustine makes the argument, and I use the Latin phrase in the article, I believe itself, which is privatio boni. Evil is the privation of good, the absence of good.
Right.
So, to use the scientific analogy, that there's no such thing as cold. Cold is the absence of heat energy.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
There is no such thing as evil in Augustine's estimation. Evil is
It's
the absence of good in the world.
right. And then, yeah, in that article that you mentioned, because you wrote an article recently, it's hosted on Catholic Exchange, I believe,
Mhm.
and it's you talk about how that plays into your perspective of it, but your perspective is slightly different, right? Or that's Like,
Yeah, it's not it's not that I fully disagree with Augustine on this.
yeah,
Um, because I think that a lot of his ideas at their heart are good and correct. I think sometimes he's bringing a lot of things into it that are just slightly askewed.
sure.
Um, and certainly a lot of people feel similar ways, especially about some of his doctrines like original sin, which
Yeah,
ha- can certainly resonate in the world of intergenerational trauma. But most people
sure.
have exception to the sexual transmission theory that's attached to that.
Mm, right.
For me, Augustine's proposition is at least a little unsatisfying. So evil doesn't
Sure.
evil doesn't exist. Evil is just the absence of good. What does that what does that really look like? How does that play out for us? Because ultimately all philosophical and theological questions have to have some practicality at their root. These aren't just abstract ideas. What does it mean when it comes to trying to define evil or understand human evil as
Mm,
it exists in our world?
right.
Saying that evil is just the absence of good, maybe that's true, maybe that's even right, but it doesn't really explain the heart of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, for me as a psychologist, I really want to understand the psychology of human evil. What
Mm,
makes an act evil? What makes a person either act in an evil way or become evil?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit more complicated because I don't know if you picked up the DSM recently, but it doesn't talk a lot about evil in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
I, in the course of my career, had at one point been working in the Department of Corrections with
Okay.
people who were diagnosed
Yeah.
with what they call antisocial personality disorder, also known
Hmm.
as sociopathy or psychopathy.
Sure.
And what I was struck with is I expected this to be kind of the idea of human evil, right? These are people who have committed horrendous acts,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes taking someone else's life, but they didn't feel, at least in my subjective estimation, as being just that. There had to be something else to it. So,
Sure.
what exactly is human evil
Yeah.
that we can try to quantify or define it?
Right.
And in the article, there's one salient line that I feel like was really important here, which for me was a revelation. I claim that behind every human evil is a lie, a certain malignant lie about the truth of the way something truly is.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. There's something, there's some kind of like temptation going on behind the scenes that is causing you to believe a lie. It's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, uh, that we exist in the state of reality.
Yeah.
Evil, it isn't that evil is um, like the absence of that thing. It's a lie about that thing.
Yes. It's a
Hmm.
perversion.
It's
Yeah,
like disordered. Yeah.
Yeah.
and this is something that I see distinctively with patients
Sure.
who are have a state of disordered thinking, a state of twisting the state of reality that they live in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For my patients in the Department of Corrections who had committed these horrible things, most of them didn't have a well-formed sense of conscience. Like
Okay.
they did horrible things and they weren't aware that they were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That wasn't a sense of twisting reality. They just didn't know exactly what they were doing to begin with. They
Right.
were,
Sure.
and this is a purely legal term anymore, but insane. They
Hmm.
had no conscious sense of what they were doing and were not responsible for their actions.
Hmm. Yeah.
Evil requires something different. Evil requires a certain malignant lie to take place. So,
Sure.
as I put this theory forward, it clearly has application, and I can go with low-hanging fruit here. Like, clearly, the institutions of chattel slavery back in the 19th century, the
Yeah.
denial of the human rights of these people, that they were human to begin with, is
Sure.
just that. It's a lie of the denial
Good
of the way
example.
things
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's this lie.
Yeah. I think you know let me get out of my lane here for a second. But when I've pondered the problem of evil and the nature of evil, that's kind of how I've seen it. Like it's like I think it's interesting how you that you say that uh people who are clinically insane, they're not consciously like the whole malignant lie part. Like there has to be this sort of like deliberate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of saying that there's sort of a deliberate maliciousness behind the evil act in order for it to be considered either evil. Otherwise, it's more like just
It wasn't even
a
there.
behavior. Like it's a disorder, and if someone is clinically insane, they're not consciously doing evil. Or in other words, they're not consciously participating in this lie. So we can't, it's
Right.
not necessarily an evil act.
They're still participating in it, but
It's an evil act nonetheless,
Yeah.
because the evil that is being wrought on their victims,
but,
right?
But is it if they aren't consciously doing it? I guess.
Yeah, is a
Well,
quandary.
well,
But go ahead.
this whole question of conscious action is very important in the West, and it
Mhm.
comes out in a lot of things in our laws. Um, so traditionally, the idea is that the thought is the father of the deed. You've thought it, ergo, you've done it. And we
Sure.
see that even in things biblically, like the 5th chapter
Mhm.
of St. Matthew. If you've looked at a woman with lust in your
Yeah.
heart, you've already committed adultery.
Mhm.
It's the
Right.
same line of reasoning. Conscious thought, or conscientiousness in general, equates to action. If
Right.
it's unconscious, you're not responsible for it, which
Mhm.
is at least the remaining legal groundwork for the defense of insanity. That this
Mhm.
person was not in their own right mind and ergo is
Yeah.
not responsible for their actions.
Right. Yeah. No, this is good. Because I think way too often I think of like the problem of evil, but I don't actually like define. Okay, but
What is evil?
what is evil?
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the first. Yeah.
So it becomes a challenge. We're introduced to the idea of evil biblically in,
Yeah.
I believe, the 3rd chapter of Genesis. We're taught of
Right.
the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, which is a very, very curious episode. But here, even in that introduction, where Eve encounters the serpent, uh, what is she being introduced to? Initially, it's a lie. She is being told that you will eat of the tree and your eyes will be open and you'll become like gods.
Hmm.
This foundational theory that I'm trying to posit here is something that ultimately has a very strong biblical root.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, because you mentioned the passage in Genesis and like when we're introduced to evil and this like this disorder that comes with a lie and temptation from the devil, right?
Mhm.
Is there any other parts of scripture that you would say play into this uh, theory as well of like evil being this temptation or lie? Or yeah, what do you think? Is there other parts of
Uh,
scripture?
so, particularly the Hebrew Bible really struggles with the question of evil because its composition is spread out over so many centuries here. There's kind of this evolving sense of trying to understand it. It's clear that the authors know of the reality of evil. Um,
Hmm.
and I go as far to say is that they feel like they're trying to learn about it. But it's very difficult to be able to put into an operational definition.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
ultimately, my intention is to create just that. And I feel like it's very limited sense.
Sure. I love that.
We can experience the idea of evil. We
Yeah.
know what it is, but when you're asked to talk about it directly, you kind of lose
Yeah.
the words.
No, totally. Yeah, it is something that we all understand subconsciously. Like
Or have encountered
have encountered like
in
or been
some way.
affected by like we all have this framework of evil. Like when evil is done to us, there's no confusion in our minds like this was an evil act.
Right.
Or even and it's it's yes, it's kind of inherent within our societal framework, but like where does that come from?
Yeah.
Like how did our ancestors develop this idea? Like it's so we inherently just understand it.
Yeah.
This is evil and this is good. And like, of course, we can be confused on the details. We confuse evil for good at times, for sure. But there's just this like universal human trait where we comprehend it. It's there, it exists, and
Right.
but when it comes to, if I were to sit down and try to tell Nathan exactly what evil is, and these are the conditions that have to occur for an act to be evil, like I'm going to have a heck of a time doing that. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. It's such a
I feel like that's partially because we, like you said, evil is so hard to define that we just go, oh, well, my experience of evil is probably different than yours.
Yeah.
So therefore
and
evil
we
must
resort
be
to the experiential for sure.
maybe it's subjective, right? So maybe I can't define evil for you because it's been different for me, like my experience of it.
Mhm.
But what you're trying to do is say, no, there is an operative definition of that. And
Yeah. So I think, I don't know about you, but I've experienced a lot of that kind of subjective claim where there's always this degree of relativism about what the nature of evil is.
right,
Does it
yeah.
really be for you? Uh, I think the world right now is very saturated in that,
Yes.
but it's very easy to be able to take some claims. So I know these are kind of the Washington generals of evil, but the Nazis themselves, no one's
Sure.
going to point to them and say, well, like, are they really evil? Is this all a
Yeah.
quick activity?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There is evil there, and everyone can see that. Yeah.
But even with that, we see the same playing out of this theory. Okay, so that evil is a lie. The Nazis tell a lot of lies, and
Mm,
malignant lies at that.
Mhm.
The most famous of which, of what they did to the Jews and the Poles during the war,
mm.
that at their heart denies again their humanity.
Right.
If it was just a question of Germany doing whatever Germany does from time to time, that wouldn't be so much the question. But the fact that the evil of the Nazis is directly linked to the malignancy of their lives. And
Yeah.
we see this play out in all kinds of things politically, I don't want to go into. Um, but the recurrence of it,
Yeah.
it, I think it becomes a question for us to know exactly what to do about it. Because we all also participated as well. It's not like
Mhm.
there's malignant lies out there that these other people are doing. We do it as well on a smaller
Yes.
scale in ourselves.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
able to recognize that's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, because it still happens to all of us, despite.
And
Yeah.
our hands aren't clean. Like we
No.
can't
Yeah.
claim to not be participants in the malignancy of these
Yeah.
of the lies that perpetuate evil, that cause us to perpetuate evil. Like we're all kind of guilty of it. Very
Yeah,
very lighthearted note there. That's
like we all know about it, right? We're
yeah.
all at least semi-conscious of the things that we do and whether they're good or bad, but we do them anyway. We're like smokers. Like at this point, every smoker knows exactly what the long-term repercussions of
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
new.
And that's the real, like that's the power of evil. Like it's such the compulsion to do evil is so strong as to override what something that is equally strong and equally important to us, which is our own ethics and our own moral code. Like I understand that this thing is wrong. I understand as I'm doing it that it's wrong, but the compulsion to do that evil, and I wish Augustine was sitting here so because he could speak to this as well. But he could he understood that as well. Like there's I understand on some level that this compulsion that I have to sleep with women is not good. Why else would I be moving away from this or trying to or seeking greater things? I understand on some level, but the compulsion is, strong nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's overpowering.
But I guess the question is it evil that actually has that power and compulsion, or is there something else? Is it the lie? Is it the temptation
Mm.
that has that power to, yeah, put us in that direction? I don't know. I think you speak to that a little bit in your article.
Yeah, there's this sense of perversity that seems to exist. And you'd asked for other like biblical
Yeah.
associations with this. St. Paul talks about this quite a bit. He
Hmm.
notices the perversity in human nature, and he also notices this idea of conscience.
Yeah.
So the perversity, he says, to will is present in me, but the good that I do, I find not. And the evil
Mhm.
that which I avoid is that which I do, which is
Yes.
an overly
Yeah.
complicated way of saying I want to do what's right. I know what's right. But when I have the opportunity to act, I don't do what's right.
Do what's
And
Yeah.
like,
evil. Yeah.
yeah, I, that is definitely a very human attribute to want to do good, but to somehow miss the mark.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Which I guess, like, going back to Augustine, he could talk about the idea of original sin and like kind of how that plays into all of this, right? And I know that maybe we don't need to get into that whole topic right now, but yeah, I guess that's kind of how Augustine thinks about those things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So original sin becomes the basis because he notices the perversity. He
Yeah.
notices that human beings have this strange sense about them where they don't need to be taught to lie. They know how to
Yeah.
lie just innately.
Yeah.
All of the evils that seem to exist in human civilization, even despite our best efforts in the last several centuries, we can't seem to get rid of because it
Yeah.
would require us to change fundamentally who and what we are.
Right.
And
Sure.
And we
Yeah.
just keep on returning to them. Like no matter how far we go in history, we would just continue to go back to the history repeats itself, right? Like we keep on going back to these core temptations.
well,
To
yeah,
the point that it's you know you almost ask the question like, what am I without my sin? What am I without the evil in my life? Like this is kind of a thought experiment that I contemplate, but like, how much of my person exists because of the things that I struggle with or exists because of my tendencies, like negative traits for sure, but the negative traits make up a part of who I am, right? Like so
oh,
there's the whole like the yeah, this is a bleak episode, but like there's kind of the idea that like, I'm sort of made up of the evil that I do in a sense, like as much as the good that I do. And of course, like, there's the new person, and I've been, created in the likeness of Christ, and I'm growing in the likeness of Christ. But, you know, I think there's a tendency for Christians to want to, hem off the sin. Like I just gotta take this out. I just gotta cut this out. At what point do you stop to be yourself? Or do you cease to be yourself because I mean, I just think it's just kind of a thought I had, but
well, yeah,
just the whole
there's a lot of
idea of
questions.
our evil being intrinsically a part of our humanity, right? Broken
I
humanity,
think
but
i- if we were to take it on a purely secular level, it would feel very overwhelming. The whole
Mm.
history of civilization is a history of abuse and violence and destruction. And
yeah,
if it was just that, my God, and we see it generationally,
Mm.
forgetting the ideas of original sin. But if you were taking a child who's completely innocent and stick them in this world which already is dysfunctional, they themselves are going to become dysfunctional.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
how do we address that? How do we address the dysfunction that exists in our humanity and in our civilization? I think if it was exclusively through a secular materialist reading of history, it would be a sense of doom,
Yeah.
which is what you're kind of speaking to the sense of darkness that surrounds this particular subject. But it's exactly in Christianity that something odd takes place. In the
Mm.
course of human history, we have this weird Deus ex machina moment that takes place in Galilee 2,000 years ago,
Yeah.
where we
yeah,
see the acceptance of grace. Suddenly,
Mm.
there's light in the world again.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that light that makes things possible, that makes grace possible in the world.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah. Into this evil all of a sudden. And this, like you said, like this, like continuous evil that just keeps happening over and over. The crazy part of the gospel is that in that process of history, something does change. Like
Yes.
all of a sudden, Jesus, God, enters in and is here now. And because of that, you know, I can now be free from this sin, even like in the sense that it's not that I won't go on sinning, like Paul talks about. I will still do what I don't want to do, but because of Christ, I can now have salvation and be with him. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, like, I know there's always talk of the good news, the euangelion of the gospel, but this
Yeah.
is ultimately it. I think that it's usually kind of offered in an anemic way that Christ came and he's more or less kind of a nice guy and he does some miracles.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But
No.
the experience of the grace of grace in our world, that you have the capacity to be some other way because of this.
Yeah.
The early church father, Origen, speaks of this, that it's because of Christ that the world is full of Christ. This is a very, mm,
Very interesting way to put it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so powerful, right? Like it's you're right. There there exists another way. There's an option now. There's two natures at work. It's not we're not I'm not destined to keep doing the things that I have done over and over and over again. Surely I will struggle with it, but there's no longer the sort of nihilistic, doom where I'm cursed by the nature of what I am to continue in this way. There's another way, there's another nature, and it could never have come from within. I never could have, conjured this up in myself, because I can just look at myself, and I know that I am not capable of producing that. I am not capable of bringing that up within myself. It's contrary to my nature, but there's now a second nature that has been imparted onto me. And the hope of that, like the old way still exists. The old Adam is still, kicking and screaming as much as he can, but there's a new Adam, and that is a gift.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like, we don't want to end on a too negative note, but I guess I would like to hear your definition of evil, because I don't know if we fully got to it. Like, your at least the theory that you have
operative
when it comes to evil.
Decent statement here. So my understanding, it has to be this, that it's not that truth is fully synonymous with good. They're different things, but they're things that are linked together.
Yes.
And in the same way that truth has to be linked with the good, evil has to be linked with some sense of falsehood or a manufacturing of, you mentioned a state of unreality here.
Yeah. The
For
lie.
me, it's just that. When patients of mine are living in a state of their own sense of delusion, a sense of their own self-doubt, that they can't see the light that exists in the world, which a lot of people can't. That's a state of evil. It obscures us from the state that we can truly see ourselves, of what we are, and we can truly see God. In William Peter Blatty's book, which became The Exorcist, which
Yes.
I think people have seen, there's a scene where the two priests are sitting at the top of the stairs, and the elder one, Father Marin, gives a very telling line. He says that I think the point of all of this, the point of the encounter of evil, is to make us despair, and I'm hoping I can remember this correctly, to make us see ourselves as ugly, to eliminate the possibility that God could love us. I think it's exactly the intention of evil in that, to be able to obscure, to be able to confuse, and to be able to blot out this very important truth, because all subsequent lies kind of stem from this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So I guess your operative definition of evil, this might be dumbing it down too much because there's so much to go into that, but it would be like, evil is connected, like you said, just like good is connected to truth. Evil is connected to the lie, and therefore, like, unreality. And
Yes.
yeah. So that's, there's a lot more that plays into that definition. And yeah, Augustine. You got it.
You're good.
Augustine.
We're going to whip him every time he gets around.
And all sorts of other church fathers play into that in their writings and works. And yeah, I guess in that though, in that definition, like we've talked about, there is the hope of God entering into that place of evil, right? Into the lie and saying, here's another way.
Yeah,
And,
it's all
here's good.
built around the idea of grace. That if the will of man is perverse, how does man do the will of God? Then he needs
Yeah.
something other than himself to be able to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this has been a really good kind of thought-provoking episode, and
Absolutely.
I feel like it just leaves me with a lot to think about. Is there any other things you would like to say on those two kind of the core topics that we had of Augustine and evil, and even the problem of evil, and anything you'd like to say on that before we close out?
I mean, there's all kinds of things that are particularly useful for people who are interested in the subject. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
called theodicy, the question of evil in the world. For me, I think the brothers Karamazov was really a big text. Um, more readable than City of God, but probably equally as long.
Not exactly readable, but more readable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great book. That's a great book. That's one on the bucket list for me. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I've wanted to for a long time.
The City of God.
Brothers Karamazov.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russian literature, for me, is a struggle with the names. They're very specific, and like I can't remember the difference between Ivan Pietrovich, Peter Ivanovich.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess for our viewers, like, make sure to check out the Scriptorium Project. You guys are on Instagram, and are you guys on any other platforms, or where do you guys do most of your work? I'm
I think it's
assuming you
really
have a
just
website.
right, and the website itself,
Yeah.
which is the scriptoriumproject.com. Uh, e- Everything is there. So we have the catalog split east-west, and then by geographical region. Hundreds of books at this point. I should probably know the exact number.
Well, it's going to take a long time for people to get through hundreds of books. So
Yes.
you've got endless material on the Scriptorium Project for people.
Definitely.
Yeah, God bless you and your team and what you guys are doing there. I think that's such a great project that you guys have going, and I just pray that you guys are all blessed in that, and that the Lord would bless it and continue to foster that good work. I think that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Education for the masses, information for the
exactly.
masses. That's
Absolutely.
Let's not have another Rome here. Let's give it to them. Yeah. Anyway, DP, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Theology on the Rise. Thank you, Nathan, for being here.
Yeah.
And being so quiet and good.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of Theology on the Rise. Please do check out DP and what he's doing over at Scriptorium Project. Subscribe to us. Leave a comment. You'll see Seth in the comments. He's still going to be showing up there. So I don't know if you see Seth down there in the comment box. Say hello. Shoot him a friendly hello or something.
And he's still going to be pretty involved behind the scenes, just not a consistent host.
But we had enough, and he had to go. So
we had to let him go. But yeah, thank you, DP, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Good
Hey.
day. No, you clearly want to sign off. You go ahead.
Okay. God bless everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Theology on the Rise. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to support us. Leave a comment down below. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the CALC, the Canadian Association of Lutheran Churches, for sponsoring this episode. If you'd like to know more about the CALC, you can go to their website, calc.ca, to find out more about the Association of Lutheran Churches in Canada and to find a church close to you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.